What's going on, everybody? This is the SI Sooners podcast, episode 109. Josh Callaway in Oklahoma City, John Hoover in Tulsa, Ryan Chapman in Norman. Guys, the weather has turned around. It's beautiful out now. Vibes are good as we continue to press on and get into obviously February here, and the spring sports are coming up. Good times are ahead here for all Sooners.
Good times are ahead. Great times are ahead. If you haven't heard yet, we have a special situation going on in the third segment. So listen, if you're one of those people that likes to skip ahead, I advise you to skip ahead. But you're going to miss a ton of football, a ton of basketball. We're going to talk softball, but then we're going to get into that third segment, man, and it's going to be a home run. We're in the NIL business. The Groves brothers, Tanner and Jacob Groves, we call them the Groves Bros. They have an NIL deal that came into their lap, and it was presented to us as an opportunity to help them further their message, build their brand, get their name and likeness out there. So we're doing that. Third segment, Groves Bros on the SI Sooners podcast, and we are stoked.
Should be a ton of fun. Looking forward to it. I was able to talk to Tanner Groves earlier this year, just about his kind of an abridged version of his recruitment to Oklahoma. Big personality,
Right.
A great guy, and looking forward to getting to know him outside of just the press conference setting. Because as we all know, cameras go on, reporters, start circling around, and you get very guarded, and the coach speak comes out. The best conversations we have with coaches, players are off camera, off mic, off to the side. We're hoping to bring a little bit of that in to you guys here on the podcast over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, so a really cool thing. Tanner Groves, Jacob Groves are officially part of all Sooners. They're part of the team now moving forward. Pretty darn cool. Obviously, a cool way to kind of get a little better insight into the basketball team as we press on through the rest of this season. So that's going to be a really cool thing. And again, like Hoop said, it's in the third segment of today's show. It's not something that's like down the road in this show. So stick with us. They're coming up later. Really cool conversation that Hoop and Ryan had with those two guys. So that'll be a cool thing throughout the remainder of the basketball season. Looking forward to that. All right. So, football stuff. Let's start. There's a lot has happened, actually. It feels like, this is supposed to be where it's slow, and it hasn't really. We're kind of getting the show together. I'm looking at, okay, what do we need to discuss? And I'm looking at the list of things, and there's a lot of things. So let's dive in first. We'll kind of work backwards. Dillon Gabriel today. Got to hear him talk. Kind of similar to, not the same situation at all, obviously, but whenever Caleb Williams did the podcast on the Prairie, it was a big deal because we hadn't talked to him. We hadn't heard him talk. Same kind of deal with Dillon Gabriel today. He was on Jeremiah Hall and Braden Willis' podcast, the podcast on the Prairie. We recommend you go check that out. It's a great show, and obviously it's going to be very different with Braden Willis still at OU. Jeremiah Hall is going to the next level, so it's kind of a different perspective from those two guys. But they had Dillon Gabriel on, so we got to hear the new Oklahoma quarterback a little bit today. Had some really interesting things to say. I think stuck out to me right at the top was that Oklahoma was where he wanted to be once Caleb Williams hit the portal. Whether Caleb came back or not, this is what he wanted to do. And he was, like he said in his tweet, he was rolling the dice that it was going to work out. He loves Venables. He loves Levy. Dillon Gabriel, got to hear him talk a little bit today. Anything that stuck out to you guys from what you've seen so far? We may not have all gotten to watch every second of it, but anything that you guys feel like, is noteworthy that came from getting to hear Dillon Gabriel talk for the first time?
Yeah, Jeremiah and Braden, shout out to those guys for getting the scoop again, the quarterback scoop. It's not really fair to the rest of us, but it's cool that those guys can bring those dudes in and get some exclusives there. Of course, we're gonna listen to it and sap up whatever content we can. But today's stuff was interesting. It was interesting to hear the new quarterback, and he is the quarterback. Brent Venables and Jeff Levy said he is the starting quarterback. There's no discussions. There's no competitions. So it's cool to hear the starting quarterback in February at the University of Oklahoma talk about his journey through the transfer portal. As you said, Josh, he wanted to come to Oklahoma whether Caleb Williams was going to be here or not. And that was after Caleb Williams entered the transfer portal. But the thing that stuck out to me as well was he was all in on UCLA, hadn't enrolled yet, hadn't started classes yet, that whole thing. He didn't get that January 3rd deadline. It was still creeping up. And then January 3rd rolls along. And what happens? Caleb enters the transfer portal on January 3rd, meaning the job was going to be open at Oklahoma. Jeff Levy had already taken the job at OU, and Dillon Gabriel looked around and said, this is an easy one. And he decided no matter what Caleb does, I'm all in on Oklahoma. But he was all in on UCLA there for a little bit, right before he wasn't. I thought that was interesting.
Right, and he called it Hoove a no-brainer. That was what he said today on the podcast to come to Oklahoma. And it's interesting too because it's not like clearly Dillon Gabriel is willing to kind of fight for his spot because it's not like UCLA was a slam dunk either. They have an incumbent starter who's been there forever, seemingly Dorian Thompson-Robinson. So Dillon Gabriel was willing to try and earn his keep wherever he ended up. Oklahoma ended up being that spot.
Yeah, for sure. And he said too that regardless of, who's on campus, competing's in his DNA, competing's what he does, and that's how he approaches it every day. I think the other thing that stood out to me is just the leadership factor that Dillon Gabriel is going to bring to this team. That's always a question, right? When a new guy comes in, transfer portal, especially at this position, Oklahoma's done a good job of it in the past, great job of it in the past. But can those guys come in, earn the respect of the team, be leaders, all that stuff? It was a huge conversation we had in the Spencer Rattler versus Caleb Williams discussion, right? The team clearly responded to Caleb Williams in a different way. Well, I think it should come as no shock that this is a guy who's started a bunch of games across 2 seasons, started to start last year before the injury, and then due to being able to redshirt last year in the COVID year, he's going to come in and have a ton of eligibility. I think it should be no shock that he's a guy that comes in, just does things a little bit differently. He had said, Braden Willis had said, wow, Dillon Gabriel came in and took me out to eat to get to know me, all this stuff. That's just a different level. And that's just what the maturity factor brings, right? When you've been around a football program for 3 years, even with your hurt, that third year, you transfer in someone else, you understand how to build those relationships on a little bit different level, all that stuff. So it sounds like we know what he's going to be on the field as far as he's going to be the starter, right? And it gave us a little window into what he brings off the field as far as how he goes about leadership, building those relationships, all that stuff. So fascinating to see. It'll be really interesting to see what results that actually yields once it comes to Saturdays this fall.
Yeah, and like you said, the leadership, and we talked about it a little bit last week, him kind of settling in seemingly really quickly. And they asked him, Braden Willis asked him on the podcast, Jeff Lebby said today, you're the starter. I mean, he basically proclaimed you, what is that like? And Dillon Gabriel said, well, it really doesn't change anything for me. I'm going to continue to work as hard as I can. And it's a new place. I've done nothing here. That was kind of the idea. It was what I did at UCF is great, but this is a new place, it's a new team, new staff. I have to earn it here now. And I think Oklahoma fans obviously are going to love hearing that from the new starter in Oklahoma, Mr. Dillon Gabriel. So from that, we got to we talked about it last week. We got to hear Jeff Lebby, and we got to hear Ted Roof, and we got to hear Brent Venables, but it was not great because his internet was, beat up. It wasn't really working. And so he comes back the next day, a do-over. Kind of insane. Didn't have to do that. He comes back the next day, 91 minutes. It was a marathon. Brent Venables went, I still can't believe it, how long he went, an hour and a half plus Zoom call last week, Brent Venables on Thursday. It was on Hoove's, his channel, his YouTube channel, John Hoover Media. If you want to watch the full thing, it's there. It's on our website, broken up into pieces on allsooners.com. Hoove, have you ever seen anything like that? A press conference that long? You ever been a part of a press conference with one guy that long?
Yes, but it was usually like a season-ending kind of thing. Not a, hey guys, sorry my Wi-Fi was so bad, let's do this again. I remember Mike Houck going after an hour, Mike just looked into the camera and said, Coach, looks like we got about 4 more questions. You got a little more time? Yeah, I got a little more time. 31 minutes later, we're still talking. And so
Crazy.
To that extent, man, I've never seen that. And let's put it into context. He gets done with the college football season, and instead of, going into recruiting and, self-scouting and game planning and stuff like that, like a normal coach, he gets hired at a different school. He's got to move. He's got to hire a staff. He's got to reach into the transfer portal and find kids. He's got to try to talk to his guys that he's got coming back. He's got to continue to touch base with the 22 recruiting class and certainly the 23 and even starting the 24 recruiting class. He's doing all these things that he wouldn't normally have to do as a new coach, a head coach at Oklahoma. And first day off he gets, guys, signing classes in the books. They're folded up. They're tucked away. We got them. We got everybody we wanted to get, he says. Oh, the media needs me for an hour and a half? Sure. Yeah, no, I don't need a vacation. I don't need a day off. It was incredible. He did it all with a smile on his face. He did it all with enthusiasm. The dude is really ingratiating himself in a very good way to the media in Oklahoma.
Yeah, no, he's winning. He's winning the media over talking for that long, especially because what we just had, which was so different, under the previous regime. Ryan, if this is how it's going to be, he may get like 3 questions at the weekly presser, the 30-minute hard cap. Like you may never get a question in again at this rate.
Look, which is fine, but you guys both buried the lead here. Day 1 was clearly on his laptop. Day 2 was on his phone. So not only did he speak to us for 90 minutes, he spoke to us for 90 minutes holding his phone up like this. Exactly what Josh just did there for 90 minutes. But no, what you said, Josh, is dead on. It's a just culture shift, right? From one regime to the other. After Lincoln Riley left to USC, there was a lot of, I don't want to call it revisionist history, but a lot of looking back on the last 5-6 years going, okay, now that we know this happened, let's put back the pieces together, and everyone looks at things differently, right? And whether that's the sincerity, did we really know Lincoln Riley? All that stuff has come out. I think it's clear that there are no questions about Brent Venables. He went on, I think it was almost a 20-minute answer to Jenny Carlson's question about the Soul team.
It was like 20 minutes.
What that's going to be with the former players coming back in, all of that stuff. And you can tell that Brent Venables, we've said it before, but it's abundantly clear. What you see with him is what you're going to get. Recruits that have been, talking since the junior days and committing have said that exact same thing too, that you can tell things are different in Norman. Ashton Kozart, the receiver that just committed, we'll talk about that later, said it's for the better. So recruiting was the big question, right? We got a ton of stuff about first-time head coach Brent Venables. We'll have to see how that all plays out. But recruiting is something you can see pretty quickly. It appears Lincoln Riley revitalized Oklahoma recruiting. Brent Venables and this staff he's put together is in a position to say, yeah, there's no reason why they should take a step back. If anything, with what they're going to be able to do defensively with that staff, you might see another uptick in Oklahoma recruiting as they move to the SEC. It'll be fascinating to watch here over this 2023 class to see this staff get an entire cycle to hack away at it and see what they can come up with.
Absolutely. So it was an incredible Zoom. After it was over, we were just talking like, normally we upload the full Zooms to allsooners.com. We're like, what do we do with this behemoth of a press conference? But we got it up for you. It is all there on Who's YouTube page as one big long video. Then, like I said, I split up into each question for you, which it was only like 13 questions, which is kind of maybe the craziest part of it all. And the first few were like 2-3 minutes each. So he really answered like 10 questions in about an hour, 20 minutes. But that's Brent Venables for you. So
I asked the question. Yeah. I asked the question when we got the email. We're going to have Brent Venables later this afternoon. And my first question was, we just had him for 30 minutes yesterday, and we got his coordinators, and we know everything we need to know, and he did the best he could with the crappy Wi-Fi. Why do we need Brent Venables? And then when he got finished, I was like, wow, blows my hair back that we got him, not just got him the next day, but got him for 91 minutes. Crazy.
Stuff of legends. Where were you? Where were you when Brent Venables went 91 minutes? Holding his phone, like Ryan said, definitely the underrated part about all that. That arm must be sore still.
Schmitty built, baby.
Almost a week later. Schmitty built. You guys see that picture of Nick Evers, by the way, and he said that? Nick Evers, after like 3 weeks of Schmitty or whatever, he's gained 8 pounds, and he's like noticeably bigger. It's like, okay, that Schmitty thing is no joke. If you haven't seen that photo, I recommend it. It's clear that there's a difference going on in Norman right now. Hate to do it. Let's talk about the previous regime real quick. I know there's massive fatigue, but the last 24 hours have been ridiculous on a lot of levels. It kind of started yesterday, and it all works together because it's all Colin Cowherd and Lincoln Riley together in this. Lincoln Riley goes on Colin Cowherd's show, I think that was yesterday, and said he didn't take players from Oklahoma. He took players from the transfer portal, which is one of the most mental gymnastics things I've ever heard in my life. And then today, Caleb Williams goes on Good Morning America, which to be completely honest, I haven't watched. I didn't see what he said. Obviously, he didn't say anything too noteworthy because I I would have heard about it if he did. He went on Good Morning America, and then Colin Cowherd took that as another opportunity to take another shot at Oklahoma, saying he did, the Party Marty, radio show in OKC, which Caleb Williams didn't do any media in Oklahoma. We talked about that at length. Guys, make sense of this. What is going on? Lincoln has lost his mind. I'm worried about the guy. He's just lying for the sake of it now.
First of all, he did do the Schwab Dog show, which was a 30-second commercial spot. So no,
he paints mine with mustard or whatever he said.
If you're in LA and you're Colin Cowherd and you hear he did a Schwab Dog, your first reaction is probably Party Marty, right, or something like that. So this is spiraling into something really stupid, where the love affair that Colin has with Lincoln Riley, who hasn't coached a game yet at USC, is spilling over into his need for attention from OU fans who get on and click and watch his show and cuss him out and all that. It's like you're literally feeding the troll, and he is a PR troll who is working almost in conjunction with Lincoln Riley. So it's weird. It's gotten weird. And every time Lincoln opens his mouth about Oklahoma, it seems to blow up in his face.
Yeah, I think if you look at it in two parts, one, everyone just remember, Colin Cowherd was insufferable when Pete Carroll was at USC because he's a USC fan who's also a bridge troll. So if you want this to go away, I know it's tough. I know it's hard. The easy thing is Don't reply to him. Don't quote tweet him. Nothing. If you want to share how stupid it is, here's the easy way. Screenshot what he said, because then he gets no engagement and he'll stop doing it. It's the same thing with Baker Mayfield. Why did he kick the hornet's nest with Baker Mayfield? A, because Baker would respond, and B, OU fans come out of the woodwork to defend their guy, which go for it. But if you want it to stop, just stop interacting with him. That's all he's trying to do is put himself in the algorithm, all that stuff. The Lincoln Riley piece, this is what fascinates me. Lincoln Riley has to be loved in his head. It's been clear for a long time. What always stuck with me is, if you guys remember his first season, a throwaway College Game Day segment, the Contenders or Pretenders, Lee Corso labels Oklahoma's Pretenders. I think it was Lee Corso labels Oklahoma's Pretenders. They carry the sign around, all that stuff. But after the Ohio State game, the huge win, a landmark win, Lincoln's first year, he goes on the post game on the field and throws the throwaway line of, "We're just a bunch of pretenders trying to win a football game." Then when he's asked about it later, days later, he steps off it and apologizes. No one was offended by it, nothing like that. But this is what happens. Lincoln Riley says things in the moment when he's emotional and then steps back. And if he gets one iota of any blowback, he's all of a sudden concerned that he's not the good guy anymore, all this stuff. So this is the mental gymnastics Lincoln Riley has to do in his head to justify what he did to Oklahoma. And it's what'll be, to me, that's the fascinating storyline, is not what Caleb Williams does at USC, what USC does. I don't care. It's Lincoln Riley. He's going to be the villain of college football, and I don't think he's going to handle it very well. It's the same thing of LeBron initially going to Miami, all that stuff. So I stop responding to Colin Cowherd. We're going to stop talking about Colin Cowherd after this, and we'll see how Lincoln does the Jekyll and Hyde thing pressing into November next year. Maybe that's when we'll revisit it real quick. Is that, the Trojans are not headed to the Pac-12 championship game. They just got beat down by Notre Dame. How did Lincoln Riley do in year one at USC?
Yeah, I mean, it's Lincoln Riley is officially the king of lying without actually lying. Like, he really gets around it in a way that is seriously impressive. It's nuts. I didn't get players from Oklahoma. I got it from the transfer portal. That was something I saw somebody quote tweet it, and shout out this guy. I don't remember who said it. Said, like, I didn't get McDonald's. I got DoorDash. Like, that's essentially what he said. You know what I mean? Like, where did they come from? The transfer portal is not a team. You know what I mean? So that was a really funny thing. Yeah, I mean, Lincoln Riley's nuts, and you're right, Ryan, about Colin Cowherd. He knows. He and many other national, reporters have found out that OU fans will get very upset and will hate share your stuff when you make fun of them, because OU fans are very, very passionate, and it's a big fan base. And we've seen it a lot of these other, national people write things about how OU is dead. There was that preseason top 25 that OU wasn't ranked in, which is obviously ridiculous. But OU fans get upset about it. And because, again, it's a passionate fan base that, you can make angry, and they'll share things around. And that's how it'll go. And then the crazy thing too about the U.S., the cowherd everywhere is small town USA apparently compared to USC. USC football Twitter account has less followers than Kansas. So while OU fans are certainly, underrating how big of a brand USC is, national media is definitely overrating it. USC does not have a huge fan base. Southern California is very lax on sports in general. It's not a diehard sports state, just period. So it's kind of somewhere in the middle in reality, but, OU is almost inarguably a bigger fan base, bigger brand than USC is. Maybe that's silly for me to say, but I feel like that's almost inarguable. So I don't know. We'll see how that shakes out, but wacky times for Lincoln and Caleb Williams. But we digress. We'll stick with we went from present to past. Let's look a little bit at future. A lot of new players coming into Oklahoma over the last few days. We'll start with the big one. Ashton Kozart, who's somebody that we talked about before on this show and who've interviewed Ashton back. I can't remember where that was, but I remember you did that. Flower Mound, Texas kid, 4-star receiver, is a 2023 product, committed to Oklahoma a couple days ago. Usual stuff, the stories on there on allsooners.com, highlights of him. Seems like a pretty legit pickup here for OU. Thoughts on Mr. Kozart, either one of you guys, because obviously, Ryan, you're at the story, and who you've talked to him. So whoever wants to take it, go for it.
Yeah, I'll go first. So it was last, I think, March, April, when we were covering those 7-on-7s, those off-season spring tournaments and get-togethers that these guys do. And he stood out to me at this it was an elite 7-on-7, a lot of Division I players there. He stood out. He was a sophomore in high school at the time and really just jumped out at me as a, very explosive, very athletic, very quick, runs really good routes, has very good hands. But what really jumped out the most was when you look at him, when you watch him operate, when you watch him interact with his teammates and his coaches, and then you get to go interview him yourself. A very serious young man, a very, focused, take one of those guys that, and they're not everywhere. I'm telling you, I won't say they're rare, but they're not everywhere. They don't grow on trees. One of those guys that wherever he goes, whatever he does, he takes care of his business. Whether that's school, whether that's being at a school function on a weekday evening or something like that, whether that's being at a 7-on-7 or a game or whatever it is, weightlifting, running. He knows what his business is and he handles it. He takes very seriously, very grown up, mature approach to it. And then you throw in 6'3", 190, and you throw in really long arms and good size hands to be able to catch the football. He's a good player. And I immediately, that day when I talked to him, I said, do you have a dream school? And he said, yeah, TCU. Well, he's growing up in Fort Worth, basically. TCU was at the time his dream school. That was long before he got an offer from Oklahoma. And I knew if he ever got that offer from Oklahoma, he would probably take it, and he did.
Yeah, and he's one of those kids, too, that you watch him in his highlights, and you go, catch point there, physicality there, and you're like, it doesn't look like he's moving too fast until you take a step back and you go, oh, wait, no one's catching him. He is making it to the end zone, that kind of stuff. And it's also... he had given an interview, I think it was with On3, in conjunction with his commitment. Basically, he was the one that said, you can tell there's a difference there for the culture. And he doubled down. It's like, and it's for the better. So that's what you get with Lebby coming in, Brent Venables. They're guys that they are what you see when you talk to them. That's going to resonate with families as well. And then just from the X's and O's perspective, it's a change that you're seeing that Lebby likes. Lebby likes these really big-bodied wide receivers who can move. You saw that with Jaden Gibson, 6'4" guy coming in. Kozart, another big body. We've seen that in the past, but it hadn't really worked out a ton. Lincoln Riley's offense did a ton with burners, right? Like D.D. Westbrook, who's not small by any means, but D.D. Westbrook, Marquise Brown, who is small. CeeDee Lamb was kind of the exception to how that worked out with Oklahoma. It's a little bit different shift in philosophy when recruiting wide receivers, and it's a mismatch problem that I think Oklahoma fans are going to really enjoy because you're getting the elite crop of guys that have that size, but also aren't lumbering bodies, anything like that. Completely athletic. It'll be fascinating to see how that pans out in Norman here under Levy.
Sticking with the offensive side of the football, they also made a JUCO pickup, which is the first one of this cycle. Obviously, Oklahoma, no stranger to JUCO additions. They've done it many a time under Lincoln Riley, under Bob Stoops. Make the first one under Brent Venables. Tawi Walker, running back from, I believe it was Palomar College in California. He's actually a safety in high school. At least that's what his recruiting profile had him listed as. Played running back at Palomar. Decent numbers, 875 yards and 8 touchdowns last year in 11 games. I think he averaged, it was like 4 yards a carry or something, 4 or 5, somewhere in there, in that range. Not a real big guy, like 5'10", I think, 210, 215 pounds. But seems like a depth addition at the very least. I mean, obviously, OU is a little thin at that running back spot still. You have some freshmen coming in. You don't really want to lean on them if you don't have to. Obviously, you have Marcus Major and Eric Gray come back, but Marcus Major barely played. Eric Gray obviously wasn't the feature guy. So it's an interesting addition here. And thoughts on what Tawi Walker brings to the table. And, we'll see. He's a preferred walk-on, right? It wasn't a scholarship offer. So he's kind of making the decision. He's going to try and earn his way into being, a notable player on this team, which I think a lot of OU fans should kind of be, a little excited about, that he's making this decision to make this jump now rather than sticking in JUCO maybe another year or so. Saying, I'm going to take this now and try to earn my way into a scholarship and carve myself out a role at Oklahoma.
How does he not have any scholarship offers is what I don't understand. 180, I think, carries, 875 yards. He's a junior college. Not a superstar, but junior college backs can be a little bit. Everybody's got a story, and so there's a reason they're there.
Right.
I'm interested to find out more about him. If you think about Ramondre Stevenson, you think about Damian Williams, junior college running backs like that who are now in the NFL or have been in the NFL in recent years. I'm not saying he's the next one, but I don't know if he fits in that line or not. That's one of the things I'm eager to see, because these guys there's been some success stories come through Oklahoma in the junior college ranks, guys that you didn't expect, guys that you didn't see on the recruiting rankings or the recruiting lists. All of a sudden he shows up and is like, whoa, hey, this kid's really good. Maybe this guy's one of those next ones. And, as we said, he's they have a need. They have a need right now. Kennedy Brooks is going to the combine. He's going to be in the NFL next year. So this is a guy that they need to get probably at this point, some carries in the offense next year.
Yeah, it's just a win-win, right? Gray, great in spots, right? But just based off what he did last year at Oklahoma, you don't feel super comfortable as he's your every down guy. Like you said, Josh, Marcus Major, again, I think he could be awesome in Levy's offense specifically, but we haven't seen him be the dude. And then I'm as big a Javonte Barnes fans as it comes, but again, it's relying on true freshmen to come in, which is sometimes it works out great, sometimes it doesn't. Running back's one of those spots that transition is usually more seamless. So you lose nothing as a preferred walk-on to come in, pay his way and contribute and hope to earn a scholarship, all that stuff. If he pans out, awesome. If not, hopefully the weird train of thought of you can only put the one running back on the field because you only got these scholarship guys, that should go away this year, as Oklahoma will have that depth returning after obviously it was pretty bare bones last year.
One more offensive addition here, another preferred walk-on announced yesterday. Local kid from Moore, Marcus Dawkins, who is going to be a wide receiver. I think he was kind of an athlete at Moore, kind of played all over, but he's going to be a wide receiver. Obviously, he put Coach Gundy, one who recruited him. So he'll play a little bit of offense here for Oklahoma as a preferred walk-on. I've never seen Marcus play, but I actually did see him play basketball, believe it or not. I called one of his basketball games this season, and obviously a very athletic kid, I believe it, as far as a very talented receiver. And again, continuing this trend that we talked about last week of keeping good in-state kids in state. I mean, it's such a preferred walk-on, obviously, but you talk about Gavin Freeman, who I'm going to be at his signing today, actually. KeepUpAllSooners.com for some comments from Freeman. Obviously, Gentry Williams, obviously the big commit, and then we had Eric McCarty from McAllister. So, I mean, it's kind of been a trend lately of Oklahoma keeping Oklahoma kids. Another one here in Marcus Dawkins.
Yeah, so I haven't seen much of Marcus Dawkins, but he has been very helpful in putting his statistics at the top of his Twitter page. 631 yards, 6 touchdowns rushing, 435 yards, 11 touchdowns. I got that backwards. 435, 11 rushing, 631, 6 receiving. Plus he plays defense, bunch of tackles, bunch of turnovers, kickoff returns, punt returns. He plays point guard on the basketball team. He's a guy that can kind of do it all. And so that's the kind of athlete that you want in your program is local kids who are good. Maybe they've got a history there. Maybe they've got a little OU heritage or whatever. They know about OU. They don't just get ignored. They don't just get, oh, well, we don't want that kid. We're not going to offer him. We don't want him as a walk-on. He's not interesting to us. Brent Venables and his staff have gotten past that kind of thinking, and they're reaching out to these kids who might be able to make a difference. One, on the team. Two, maybe on the scout team if they're not able to break into the lineup as starters. And there are so many guys who in Oklahoma OK Preps football who would absolutely die for a shot at being a walk-on at OU. Are you kidding me? They're lining up for that. And so to be able to get those guys and get the best of them and let them fulfill their dream, let them help the football team, it's huge. It's huge for the growth of the program in terms of getting back to grassroots.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing here is just the inroads back into Oklahoma high school football more than anything, frankly. A preferred walk-on's a preferred walk-on, right? The stories that come out as success are going to be awesome. And for every one of those, there's a bunch that, like you said, John, are great behind the scenes, and we just never see themselves personally impact on Saturday. But like you alluded to earlier, Josh, get those connections back in Oklahoma high school football. Make it to where these schools know you because you're here all the time, as opposed to you only come knocking when you need something. That goes a long way because recruiting is a relationship business.
We're going to close this segment on obviously a somber note here, a subtraction, as Jeremiah Cradell announced that he's not necessarily retiring from football. It sounded like probably stepping away from playing football. Says recommendation of doctors after too many concussions, basically, which just sucks. I mean, obviously, just a human element. You hate to see that. So Jeremiah Cradell stepping away from playing football. He is going to stay on the team as a defensive assistant, which is crazy cool by Brent Venables. To give him that chance to still be around his teammates and be a part of the team in some capacity while he, pursues his degree. But obviously, talking about strictly on the field, it's significant. I mean, he was supposed to be, whenever he came to Oklahoma, he was expected to be a big part of the defense in the near future. We heard a lot of really good things about him last spring. He was like one of the big winners of the spring last year. Didn't end up happening this year because he was battling injuries, and now obviously it looks like his playing days may be over. Hoover, obviously this is a bummer for Jeremiah, a guy who we've talked to a couple times, availabilities and whatnot. Good kid. He seemed to have a lot of upside as a player, but it looks like his playing career might have got cut short here.
Yeah, it's too bad, isn't it? That you have to step away from football from concussions. Like you said, doesn't mean he's permanently retiring. He's getting some good advice from doctors who care about him and want the best for him. So stepping away, but you saw Grant Calcaterra step away from football for a couple of years and then reemerge at SMU, and he's got a future there apparently if he wants it. But it's not something you want to mess around with concussion wise. Listen to your doctors, listen to the people who care about you, that kind of thing. But you're right. He went into last season as the starting nickelback. Billy Bowman does not start the regular season if Jeremiah Cradell is healthy. In 2 days in training camp, I think he would have been the starter. If he'd have been able to stay healthy, I think he would have been the starter all season because remember there was a little bit of inconsistency at that spot. So it's a loss for Oklahoma secondary for sure because he's an athletic guy, talented guy, fearless guy, loves to hit. He's got a bigger reach. I think he's 5'11", but he's got a bigger reach than 5'11". He plays about 6'2", 6'3". So got nice long arms and he plays up in the air. So he's a guy that he could really have helped this defense over the last couple of years and it just didn't work out.
I think the cool thing with him, though, is he's a guy that I think, unfortunately, a lot of people's lasting memory of him is him committing on signing day, right? And then the video from Oklahoma comes out of Lincoln Riley and the staff just going nuts.
Right.
And he's a guy that multiple times on Twitter was like, yeah, he he stayed. He kept plugging away. It was tough, but he never entered the transfer portal. One of those guys that had he medically been cleared, I think would have been a cool success story as far as just if you stay at one program and keep fighting, this is what you can be, not always have to throw your hands up and say into the portal. So sucks for him from the playing perspective, but sounds like he'll get to stay on staff, like you said. He also said in that announcement he's going to, finish his degree in criminology, I believe it was. So good for him taking care of all that other stuff, and hopefully, whether it be coaching or analyst or something like that, if he wants to stick around football, he'll be able to find a way to.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like. I mean, a lot of times guys, whenever their playing career is over, they kind of don't know what to do because that's all they know. But he said, in his statement on Twitter that the time away really helped him kind of figure out his life outside of just football all the time. So, that's a cool thing that he's getting to finish his degree while being on the staff. And again, that's a cool thing from Coach Venable. So we'll see if he has a future in coaching maybe, or if, obviously he goes into what his degree, his career path, whatever he's wanting to do there, obviously, with that degree. So we'll see how that shakes out, but wish him the best, obviously. All right, we're going to take a timeout now. We'll get into some Sooners in the draft stuff. Had a surprise declaration for the draft. One guy's killing it in the draft process. Ton of combine invites. We'll talk about all that next on the SI Sooners podcast.
Hey, listen up. Winter's here, okay? But the season's in Oklahoma. Cold one day, hot the next. That's a lot of work for your heating and air unit. But the guys at Trade Pros, they got you covered. Sign up for one of their no-hassle service plans. You can go pro, become elite, or the best deal's the MVC, most valuable customer. They'll come out twice a year and tune up your AC and your furnace. You get priority scheduling, and you get additional discounts. Just call Chris at Trade Pros, 405-316-0598. That's 405-316-0598. Or go to TradeProsOKC.com.
On Twitter, you can follow SI Sooners at @all_Sooners. Ryan's at Radios Ryan. Hoover's at Johnny Hoover. I'm at Josh M. Callaway. Our website is allsooners.com. We're a Fan Nation affiliate, part of the Sports Illustrated Network. All right, let's talk about some NFL draft. A few things here going on with Oklahoma over the last few days. Just before we started recording, just a little bit ago, we got the Combine invite list. OU has the third most after Alabama and Georgia. 11 guys, which is making fans almost mad in a weird way because it's like, why weren't we better with all these Combine invites? I'll rattle them off real quick. Brian Asamoah, Nick Benito, Gabe Burkish, Kennedy Brooks, Jeremiah Hall, Marquis Sayes, Tyrese Robinson, Isaiah Thomas, De'Aaron Turner-Yell, Perrion Winfrey, and Mike Woods. So all 11 of those guys got Combine invites. I'm not sure if all 11 will get drafted. Certainly a lot of them have a good chance of getting drafted. But, 11 guys invited. That's, like I said, third most, just behind the two big dogs, Alabama and Georgia. Pretty impressive for Oklahoma here, and a good chance to get a lot of these guys drafted.
Actually, Josh, it's tied for second, tied with Alabama.
I'm sorry. My mistake.
Georgia had 14. Alabama's got 11. Oklahoma's got 11. So by far the most in the Big 12. There's a handful of schools that have 8. I think a couple have 9. But, yeah, this is something that's ultimately going to frustrate Oklahoma fans. The last 2 years have been 9-2 and 11-2 with one Big 12 championship and one coming up short and 4 Big 12 losses and ultimately falling short of what this program standard is. And how do you do that with so many guys that go off into the NFL? Well, it's a lot of it, folks, was coaching. I think we've come to understand that and agree on that. But let's call it what it is too. Brian Asamoah played about, I'm going to be harsh here, and I'm going to say 6 really good games, including the last 3 regular season games before he opted out of the bowl game. Nick Benito had a lot of good games, probably could have been more productive getting to the quarterback. How much of that was scheme? How much of that was what Alex Grinch and those guys were doing up front on the defensive front? Same with Perrion Winfrey. Same with Isaiah Thomas, guys who showed a ton of ability and made a lot of plays, but left you always wanting more. Like, if he can do that here, if he can do that this many times against this team or against this future NFL offensive tackle, how come he can't do it more consistently? And I think a lot of that again goes back to coaching. The offensive line, the running backs, the guy, Jeremiah Hall's coming out. The offensive guys that are coming out. I think we've seen productivity and consistency and starting ability out of them, but it's the defensive guys that you look at and you say, how come they didn't play better?
Well, and that was the storyline all year, right? With Alex Grinch in his press conference. How many times do we sit there and he's like, I got to figure out a way to motivate him. I'm not connecting. The message isn't getting there, all that stuff. And then since the coaching changes have happened, obviously, Perrion Winfrey, ironically, weirdly enough, has been the most vocal about all the stunt and twist and stuff like that. It doesn't erase the fact that in October you were a non-factor. We'll get into that here in a minute. I'm not sure I'm going to make many friends with that conversation. But yeah, it's frustrating. But the good news is this new defensive staff coming in, Brent Venables is one of him and Dave Aranda are 1A, 1B, however you want to flip it around, whatever. They're clearly the two best defensive coordinators in college football. But no ifs, ands, buts about it. The staff that Oklahoma's put together, you shouldn't have that problem for too many more years as far as having this ceiling of athleticism and then a gap in production where it doesn't make much sense.
Absolutely. So 11 guys invited. Somebody not invited who is going to be in the draft, somewhat shockingly, is LaRon Stokes. Obviously, a very late declaration here. They got into this. I mean, he did the winter workouts, right? I mean, for a couple of weeks, and then is hitting the draft. I don't really know what to make of this. He started off his career really good. He was the freshman of the year, right? Or newcomer or something. He got something in 2019. Got off to a good start, and it just never really picked up. And now he's kind of suddenly not just leaving, not just like hitting the portal, but going to the next level. I don't really know what to make of this.
Yeah, it's interesting. He's a homeschool kid, okay, from Tulsa. Went to Northeastern A&M, NEO Junior College. Comes to Oklahoma, and he's the Big 12 defensive newcomer of the year.
Yeah, not freshman, newcomer.
Yeah, and he just kind of his productivity just kind of leveled out these last two seasons, and I don't know for sure, Josh, that he did go through the Schmitty program, the offseason, the winter stuff. I don't know. He may have started it. I don't know if he's all in yet on that stuff before he decided that okay, that's enough for me. I'm going pro. If you put it in scope of where he's at in his career, how much is he going to play this year? He's having to learn a new defensive system. The whole what Perrion Winfrey's doing was Isaiah Thomas is doing now in the draft prep. He's a senior. He's graduated. He's got his degree. He's got nothing left to do, prove, accomplish at Oklahoma in college. Sure, he could play another year, play for a new coach, but doesn't have to. But if you're ready to get paid, you're ready to go out and get in a training camp somewhere, get on a practice squad somewhere, maybe make a 53-man roster somewhere, have at it. I mean, like I said, he's one of those guys in the classification. He's a senior. He's a grad student, actually. He doesn't have to declare. He doesn't have to make a decision. It's not like he missed the deadline or anything. Those guys can go anytime they want. So he made a business decision, and I think Oklahoma could have used him this year. I think he would have had a good super senior season. I don't know if he would have been a regular starter or an all Big 12 type talent or anything like that. So he could have been a guy that really helped the team, but time to get paid.
Yeah, I'm not sure what another year in Norman would have done for his draft stock, and I also don't know what position he is in Brent Venables' defense. I think that's the other thing. I don't think he was quick enough to really be an impactful end for what they want to do, the size they want to play at. I don't think he was going to balloon up to the size they wanted on the interior. He was one of those guys that would have been an awkward leftover tweener he was perfect for what Alex Grinch wants. Doesn't really fit in my eyes for what Brent Venables wants to do, but what do I know? Brent's forgotten more football in the last 30 minutes than I'll ever know. But that would have been my question for LaRon Stokes coming in. So maybe if he had a similar question, or if it's just, hey, look around, what am I really going to do for my draft stock? It's going to be about the same. Might as well go now. Don't want to risk an injury or anything like that.
Yeah, I hear what you guys are saying. I mean, I don't, I'd be lying if I said I have a real good feel on what scouts view LaRon Stokes and everything. I can't fathom him getting drafted, but maybe he will. I don't know. Maybe, without a combine invite, that's so hard to get drafted without a combine invite. You know what I mean? So I don't know. We'll see. In my head, it seems like playing of the year at Oklahoma was obvious, but I get what you guys are saying. So we'll see how that shakes out, and obviously wish him the best, see how that pans out for him. Hopefully it's the right decision. You don't want to see guys make wrong decisions for their career. So hopefully that shakes out for LaRon Stokes. Now, we talked about a little bit before. Let's go back to P don't play. Monster. He's having had a huge week in Mobile. Perrion Winfrey was a Senior Bowl MVP, first one in Oklahoma history, first defensive MVP since 2014. Then got all his stuff stolen. His jersey and his helmet, I think it was, got stolen out of his locker or his car or something. I can't remember exactly what he said. So that sucks, So, but it was a big week for Perrion, flying up draft boards. Looks like a potential first round pick here for big old Perrion. I mean, he was like the big winner of Senior Bowl week.
Thieves suck. Sounded like he got it stolen out of a parking garage in Dallas. His jersey was signed and autographed by all his teammates and others on the East-West Shrine Bowl, or the Senior Bowl, I mean. So, yeah, that sucks. His helmet, his cleats. I hope he took his trophy in, at least his MVP trophy. Took it in and didn't leave it in the car, but that stinks for him. He is by far one of the, if not the biggest, definitely the biggest winners in the draft process so far. I saw a mock draft today that had him at the end of the second round, and I thought, that's way too low. He has played himself into, if not the first round, then certainly first round consideration. If you need a 3 technique to go in there and be disruptive, get blockers' hands off of you, get to the quarterback. He is a bigger, look at the guy. He's a big-shouldered, long-armed, flat-bellied. He's lean. He's 305 pounds. He played last year about 290. He's 305 now, and he still looks lean. This is something that I don't know why you wouldn't draft him. He looks like a first-rounder to me. I'm not going to say he's Aaron Donald, but he's a bigger version of what Aaron Donald looks like and plays like, and that is a guy who's got very active hands. He's got a lot of he's leaned up, and he's got a lot of explosiveness. So don't get crazy. I'm not saying he's Aaron Donald. You know me, I'm a Rams fan. Aaron Donald is the GOAT, but just saying, he's got that kind of look to him.
The reason not drafting that high would be that his college tape is not first round. It's not even close. It's third round.
Yeah.
And he's a guy that, let's not forget, the month of October, the second that Jalen Redmond was not beside him, he was a total non-factor. We were sitting here going, hey, is Perrion Winfrey still playing football? There were questions about his motor and loafs and stuff like that. He did everything that you need to do in this Senior Bowl week. It was very impressive, and it's well earned. And I understand the scheme fit was not great for him at Oklahoma, and he probably would have dominated if he was just playing straight up. Here's the problem. Aaron Donald played at Pitt. Do you think he was getting the best coaching in the country? No. And everyone said, oh my gosh, look at this monster. At some point, the production matters. Yeah. And so Perrion Winfrey was always going to be a guy that once we get into this part of it, he's going to be a superstar. And he did it for a week in Mobile. You don't take that away from, he did exactly what you needed to do. The question isn't if he can do that for a week. It's can he do it for 17 weeks? And there's going to be a GM that falls in love with him. And he may be one of those guys that just thrives in the NFL. There's a ton of those guys, right? That once you take away having to go to class and be on a college campus or any of that stuff, when it's just, hey, they get that mentality of I'm going to be at the facility from 9 to 5. This is my life, all that stuff. He may be one of those guys that may be great. Nothing of his college film says that he's a first round draft pick. I'm sorry. He did great job in Mobile.
Right.
That would be the thing that you step off it and go, he wasn't great unless the other people around him were great. So that would be my pump the brake. I'm not saying he's going to be a bust or anything like that, but the Senior Bowl is the Senior Bowl. It's 1 week, and it's exactly why you skip out on the bowl game so you can go do this, put on this show in front of scouts and in front of NFL staffs. I just need to see him be that Perrion Winfrey for more than 1 week at a time.
Yeah, I mean, you guys know I've been a big believer in Perrion. I had him as a dark horse for Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year last year, and he had a disappointing season, obviously. I think Lincoln Riley and Alex Grinch definitely failed him in some regards, but in other regards,
sure.
I think it's fair to question his effort level on every snap and things like that. So we'll see how that shakes out with Perrion, moving forward. There's a decent chance he sneaks in the back end of the first round, so we'll see if how that happens. And it just feels like there's a chance Perrion and maybe throw Brian Asamoah in there of like these guys who might be really good at the next level, and OU fans are kind of almost frustrated because
for sure
man, I wish they were better when they were. Not that they were bad. They're obviously both guys were good, solid players, but not like all American, awesome, dominant players at Oklahoma, which you'd think you would kind of hope for that.
Ryan, I hear what you're saying. He needed to show better productivity, especially on a week-to-week basis. You'd like to see more production out of somebody that big, that strong, that talented, that fast. I've been talking to Sam Mays about this on my radio show on the Sports Animal every day. We talk about Perrion a lot, and something that he said sticks with me, and something that I said sticks with him. His point was the slanting that they did on 45% of the plays on defense didn't do him any favors. He is a one-on-one guy. He wants to he doesn't want to slant out of the play. He doesn't want to slant into another blocker. I mean, who does? You do that defense because you're behind the eight ball. I compared it to Mike Leach's offense. You do that defense because you're not any good at playing regular defense. You got to do something else. You got to trick it up. You got to gimmick it up. So that's what that defense is. After you finish gimmicking it up and you get on that team's level and you've got guys like Isaiah Thomas and Jalen Redmond and Perrion Winfrey, it's time to stop doing that. It's time to start winning some one-on-one battles. And I don't think they did their players a great service by continuing to run the pre-motion or the pre-snap motion, the jumping around, the changing, trying to confuse the offense. Offensive line doesn't care. Offensive line is working in a cohesive unit. They're smart. When you jump around, they're like, okay, good, here's our backup plan. And then they block you out of the play. My point on Perrion was, and you and I scratched our heads on this at every game last year, every game, starting with Tulane, why are there 4 backup defensive linemen on the field on the second possession of the game? I think that was the Baylor game. We talked about that. And then the next to last possession of the game against Tulane, why are there 4 backup defensive linemen on the field in the next to last possession? What did Tulane do? Tulane drove right down the field and scored the touchdown to get within a 1-score game. And then they recovered the onside kick. Listen, the backups are nice players, but they are backups for a reason. I never got why Alex Grinch and Calvin Thibodeau and those guys, Jamar Cain, whoever else, felt the need to sub so much, and it drove the fan base crazy. It was liberal substitutions throughout the game, wholesale hockey changes, the hockey line changes, where it's like, you guys just played 2 plays, now come out. You don't get tired after 2 plays. You don't. Even at 315 pounds, you don't get tired after 2 plays. Leave those guys out there and let them eat. It demotivated them. It took them out of what, the whole let me eat, feed me mentality. You can't do that when you're standing on the sideline for literally half the defensive snaps. So that had to be something that was frustrating for Perrion and those guys as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree with everything you say, right? I agree that Grinch, the whole staff was a disservice to Perrion and all that stuff, but we're talking about a first-round draft pick. We're talking about a guy that you're going to invest millions and millions and millions of dollars in. If you know you're only playing half those plays, you better damn well not be loafing around on any of those plays. He was a complete non-factor in the month of October. I'm sorry. I agree. The second that you don't have a scheme fit with you, say you get drafted by insert team here, they go through a coaching change, bring in a new defensive coordinator, and maybe they don't run the exact same thing as the guy you're drafted by. We can't have questions if you're a first round draft pick, if you're just going to loaf, if you disagree with what's going on. I'm sorry, but for a first rounder, that's too big of a risk for me to put that on it. Now, you only need one team to fall in love with you, and everything he did at the Senior Bowl says guy that should be shooting up. I just can't separate the lack of production, because here's the other thing. What was a major problem 2 years ago? Look at the Big 12 championship game. The stunting, twisting, all of that. He then is staring Brock Purdy down dead to rights, and he's jumping in the air. What's the first thing any defensive lineman's ever taught? Don't leave your feet. All that stuff is not stunting, twisting, any of that. That is getting caught up in the moment and not doing what you're taught. Now, he got his revenge. I'm still not sure that Brock Purdy is actually alive after his trip to Norman this year, all that stuff. But again, I'm sorry. If we're talking first-round draft pick, you put that film up and you try to tell me he's a first-round draft pick, we're just going to disagree on football and move along. And that's all. My biggest concern is when you talk first-round draft pick, nothing he did at Oklahoma said that at all.
I will say this, Ryan, something like 55% of the first round draft picks in the NFL draft actually play like first round draft picks.
Yeah.
It's a shockingly low percentage. You would think 85, 90% of those guys are going to hit. No, it's pretty low. There's a lot of busts. There's a lot of first round busts. And then there's a lot of guys who are taken on promise like Perrion, who don't have that first round film, who come out and play like gangbusters in their NFL career because they get put in the right situation. So something Sam said that he said if Winfrey had, you talk about production, getting sacks, getting to Brock Purdy, getting those big numbers up. If you weren't slanting out of the play on every play, if your first step wasn't going the wrong direction on every play because that's where your coach told you to go, if you're supposed to be going over here and your coach is making you go over here, maybe you do close that gap on the quarterback in the last eighth of a second, and get that sack, because he was close. He was really, Benito was too, super close on a lot of those plays. If they just play it straight up, maybe they do get more sacks. Maybe they lead the nation this year in quarterback sacks and tackles for loss. Who knows?
We'll finish up here with some other sports before we get on to the Groves brothers to wrap up the show. Don't really have much to add for women's basketball. They beat West Virginia on Saturday in double OT. It was a wild game. They weirdly don't have a midweek game, which doesn't happen very often. They don't play again until Saturday. They play in Austin. It's getting the Longhorn Network treatment on Saturday. So they keep winning. They're up to number 12 in the poll now. I mean, just Jenny B keeping it rolling. I mean, I don't know what else to say about that. I mean, they try to keep things going at Texas. If they win at Texas, then seriously, they're top. I mean, they probably should already be in the top 10, but definitely if they beat Texas, put them in the top 10.
All I can say about Oklahoma women's basketball right now is they've got three in the last 2 weeks, buzzer beaters, last second, not walk-offs, but just, you're down 2 or the game's tied and you hit a shot to either tie it, send it to overtime, take the lead. It's been unbelievable. And it's Liz Scott did it twice. Maddie Williams did it once. Who's next? I'm guessing Taylor Robertson is probably going to hit a game-winning 3 at some point in the near future. It's a fun team to watch for sure.
Beat Texas on the road, then you're looking at that one matchup in Ames for a Big 12 regular season championship after you swept Baylor for the first time since 2009. They take care of both of those. If Jeannie Bronchek is not the National Coach of the Year, it's a highway robbery.
I agree. The unbelievable turnaround, we talked about it before, just it makes no sense. And I think I saw bracketology somewhere had OU as a 4 seed. That seems low to me. Yeah. Get them up 3 or even 2 line could be in the future there for that team. We'll see what they do in Austin this weekend. The men, meanwhile, lose again on Saturday. Ryan and I were there at Gallagher-Iba. Hideous, just hideous basketball. So many turnovers again. They just don't have anybody who can generate a shot. I don't know how it turns around. They play Texas Tech at home tonight. Ryan and I will be there. Then they play at Fog on Saturday. Ryan and I will be there again. And then they play Texas at home next Tuesday. That is brutal stretch again in this conference. They're still in most bracketology, still have them in amazingly, but I just don't know where the wins are. It's a rough go right now for Moser's crew.
Yeah, Josh, I don't know what you're talking about. Tanner Groves played great against Bedlam, against Oklahoma State.
He was like the only guy scoring. Yeah,
no, he we got those guys coming up. So stick around if you want a little insight on men's basketball. But you're right. I asked Ryan on today's Hoover and Mays show, on the Sports Animal, if you could fix one thing right now, what is it? Is it the turnovers? Is it the 3-point shooting, which I think in losing 7 of their last 8 games is something around 22%, something like that? Or is it the rebounding? They got out rebounded again the other night badly. They got out rebounded 42-20 by TCU. So if you could fix one of those things, you might be winning some of these games. If you could fix 2 of the 3, you'd probably win every one of them.
Yeah, it's tough. And to Josh's point that, okay, Tanner Groves is getting his, Elijah Harkless' shot looked good. In Bedlam specifically, Porter Moser outlined how the OSU game plan was to rush Emoji Gibbs in the second half and then basically have 4 guys put a foot in the paint and say, if you can't hit a 3, figure it out. And Oklahoma wasn't able to do that. So we're still waiting on that game. Obviously, it happened in the one exhibition game against Rogers State, right, where everyone was unconscious from 3. Feels like we're still waiting on that to hit the regular season, where like one of these games, the shot's got to fall, right? So that's the interesting thing. They're in right now based off of their resume they've built thus far. Like you said, though, John, when you're looking to the future, you don't know where the rest of those wins are going to be. So they're going to have to upset one or two of these teams. Otherwise, we're going to talk about it in a month. Their resume is the exact same of what it was, and everyone else around the country, the teams on the bubble, are adding. That's where the Sooners would get into trouble. But Porter Moser's preached this over and over. He said the guys know it. Every night out in this conference, big opportunity to go out and get you what in another place would be a season-defining win. Shout out Arkansas for upsetting Auburn. Look at what that did. OU's got one of those games almost every night. So it's slim pickings for sure, but if they go out there, stun Texas Tech tonight, then all of a sudden it's, whoa, they added another signature win. Look at that. So that's life in the Big 12.
I think they just need John Hoover in the building, I guess, because the only time that Hoove was there was when they pounded Arkansas at the BOK Center. Probably their best win of the year, and by Porter Moser's own admission, just yesterday, that was their best game of the season. I think it was Eric Bailey asked him, "What would you say was your best performance or the last time you played a complete game?" He's like, "We never really play a complete game. I'm a perfectionist, blah blah blah. But I would say Arkansas was our best game." So there you have it. I guess I just need John Hoover there. And then, like I said, I said this yesterday I did a radio spot. The opportunity is still there. Obviously, like Ryan said, the games are there, and they're projected to make it in most bracketologies still at this point.
Yeah,
the games are there. If they can still from this point forward. If they go 500, they might still make it, but it's just hard to do with the schedule they have. So we'll see what happens, but the opportunity is still there. If you're a player on that team and you're losing some motivation or some will, you're still there. Everything's still out in front of you. And if you make March Madness, who knows? I mean, it's the craziest tournament in sports. So, we'll see how it shakes out over the next few weeks here. Big 12 tournament coming up soon, about a month from now.
Yeah, Joe Lunardi from ESPN has them as an 11 seed right now. He calls them the last bye.
Right?
The last bye. Thank you. Yes, the last team to get a bye, and not have to play the play-in. So as an 11 seed, he's still got 7 teams from the Big 12 in the tournament as well. So, and Oklahoma's certainly one of them. So they're 3-9 in conference play right now. Is that right? So that's going to be a tough climb.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, it's a challenge, and the schedule doesn't get any easier. You look at the schedule, there's just not any gimmies on it. I mean, there's just not in the Big 12. It's a difficult league.
3-7. I think I said 3-9, but it's 3-7. Yeah.
Yeah. I think they're 8th right now. At last check, they may have changed after last night's games. I'm not sure, but toward the bottom as of now. Because they'll work their way up, but toward the bottom as of now. We'll finish up here before we get into the Gross Brothers. Softball season is here. OU fans very excited about this softball team. Rightfully so. I mean, they're historic year last year. On paper, better possibly this year. Ryan, you've been doing the preview series. I'll go to you here first. They play tomorrow. Thursday is the opener. I think it's 4:30, if I'm not mistaken. ESPN Plus has the game. UC Santa Barbara. So there you go. I mean, it's time. The softball season has arrived.
Yeah, and if you've missed it, it's a 5-part season preview. Part 5 comes out tomorrow, profiling Patty Gasso, JT Gasso, Coach Rocha, the pitching coach, basically how the coaching staff's approaching this. The other 4 parts are position group by position group breakdowns on the Diamond. Allsooners.com is the spot to be, and expectations couldn't be higher. Patty Gasso said that they're one of the only teams in the country that right now they're talking about these big seeding games. Saturday, they'll play top 5 UCLA. Pick your poll. Number 4, I believe, in the USA softball poll, which is my poll of choice. And that'll be on Flow Softball. Josh and I will be driving back from Lawrence, Kansas, trying to work with Kansas Cell Reception and Flow Softball, seeing how we can make all that work. But the Diamond Sports get ready to go. And this softball team, Patty Gasso said it in her preseason press conference. If my coach walked in and said, you have a chance to be the best softball team to ever play, what would that do to motivate you? That's the bar in Norman, right, wrong, or otherwise. It'll be interesting to see how they battle through this season, see if they can live up to that.
Yeah, a lot of pressure on this team, and they're young in a couple of spots. They're untested in a couple of spots. They've got girls that are stepping up to, like you said, Ryan, from North Texas to Oklahoma. Not just North Texas to Oklahoma. Typical. It's North Texas to the crown jewel of women's college softball right now, which is Oklahoma. So there's some adjustment periods. I think that some girls are going to be going through. When you talk about Jordy Ball, the freshman of the high school player of the year as a freshman, she's been fantastic in scrimmages and stuff like that. Her career in high school and club was just unbelievable. Is it enough to put that mantle on a true freshman right now coming in? I don't know. We'll see. It's not all about throwing heat on every pitch, although she can do that. The schedule, as you said, is interesting because I think they're on the road for the entire first month of the season. If I'm looking at the schedule here correctly, they play Thursday tomorrow at UC Santa Barbara. Then they got 3 games at Irvine, or 4 games at Irvine, California, including UCLA. Then they got 5 games in Houston. Then they got 5 more games out in Cathedral City, California, at the Mary Nutter Classic. March 10th. No, they go back. They come home for a game, Minnesota, on March 7th, and then March 10th it's off to the Rainbow Classic in Honolulu. So the folks are going to be wanting, the softball fans who are passionate and crazy about this team are going to be wanting to see their team when they finally get home. It's going to be a long first half of the season, almost first quarter of the season, before they get to see them play at home.
Yeah, I think they put the tickets on sale. It was like 10 a.m. and I want to say they were sold out by like 10:45.
Yeah,
so,
sold out
for the season. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's it's going to be mayhem for sure, and excited to see what that team looks like. Like you said, Ryan, the bar, it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, it's like championship is the given. It's like being historically great is the hope. Basically, it's like a championship where they just like are pretty good would be disappointing, which is stupid. But that's where Patty Gasso has that thing at this point. Pretty amazing. All right, that's it for us for this. Obviously, we're going to go to the Groves Bros now for the third segment. I'm tapping out for that. It was just Hoover and Ryan. Great stuff with Tanner and Jacob Groves. That's how we'll finish up the show in segment number 3, in the final segment of the SI Sooners podcast.